Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the third and final series of our Lunch and Learn, the Black Teacher and Administrator Pipeline. I want to welcome you. I hope you have grabbed something to eat and you're ready to learn some new stuff from our wonderful guests. I want to reiterate sort of why we have come together to talk about this issue. I am here with my partners, the Diversity and Leadership Institute, as well as the Center for Powerful Public Schools, along with AXA. We are really interested in the impact of Black teachers on student achievement. And so what you have heard from our first two series was a look at the research and how Black teachers impact student achievement, both for our Black students in terms of engaging them better, establishing how they can improve in the school system, and how they're ready for college when they're engaged with at least just one Black teacher, as well as the impact on white students and other students of color. Then that next series, we talked about what it really takes for Black teachers to become credentialed, the barriers to credentialing, and some of the success stories that we've seen throughout our state and throughout the nation. And so now, in our final piece, we want to now bring in some practitioners, some of our leaders around the state that have been doing this work and have been engaged in supporting Black teachers, supporting Black administrators, and really talk to them about what their success looks like, and then maybe what some barriers have been. And I'm going to introduce our guests in a minute. Now, I also want to encourage all of you that are out there on Facebook or YouTube to please submit your questions, your comments. Let's be engaged, because I certainly want to ensure that all of you have the opportunity to ask our guests some questions as we move forward. Because I'm sure I always get some good questions out there. And even though I may have a select group of questions, it's always good to hear from others to see where they're thinking and to see where you are thinking and engage our guests this afternoon. And so I appreciate that. So I want to start by introducing our guests. We have with us Dr. Judy White. I would say the newly retired Dr. Judy White, the county superintendent of Riverside County. Just to give you a few tidbits about Dr. White. She started her career as a classified staff member assisting principals at San Bernardino High School. She went on to get her teaching credential and taught in multiple settings throughout San Bernardino City Unified School District. She also later became a principal, an assistant superintendent, and a deputy superintendent, all within San Bernardino City Unified. I had the wonderful pleasure of getting to know Dr. White when she became the superintendent of Moreno Valley Unified School District, where she spent 6 years working with all the employees and students in Moreno Valley. And then I continued to work with her and get to know her as she was the county superintendent at Riverside for the past couple of years. And so I'd really like to welcome Dr. White with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
And then also, this is wonderful for me, because I always love to have the opportunity to work with some of my close friends that I grew up with and that I've worked with over the years. And so we have with us Margaret Fortune, the president and CEO of the Fortune Schools. And I'm going to share just a quick tidbit before I kind of get into her career and what she's done and all the great work. Margaret and I worked together at the Secretary for Education's office when we were both with Governor Gray Davis. She was my boss. So it's really great that we're able to see each other now. And not to mention that is both of our fathers were superintendents. So we have a kindred spirit of being children of superintendents in the state of California, and both of them worked very long careers as a superintendent. But with that, let me also say that she is the president and CEO of 7 public charter schools in both Sacramento and San Bernardino County, with about 1,800 students. She's also founded an early college public school in Sacramento with Cosumnes River, and also one with Cal Poly San Luis Obispo that's focused on science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And at that school, students can earn their high school diploma and their associate's degree upon graduation. Now, I think what's even more valuable is that Margaret operates the Rex and Margaret Fortune School of Education, which is a graduate school that credentials teachers and school administrators for over 60 public school systems, with the goal of addressing the state's teacher shortage. Now, the reason why I say that's even more important and more valuable is that Rex and Margaret are her parents, and she has named her school and the School of Education after her parents, and leaving a legacy of achievement and leadership that will stand the test of time. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Margaret as well to our conversation this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Adney. Glad to be here.
All right. Hey, so let's get started. As you've heard, we're really talking about how we can support our Black teachers and our administrators in this system. And so I wanted to ask this question, and Dr. White, I wouldn't mind starting with you. Can you provide some insight in how you have created conditions for Black teachers and principals to thrive in the profession?
Thank you so much. When I thought about this question, the key word is thrive. And so we don't want them just to be in the system, but we want them to thrive, to prosper, to be successful, and to grow and to actually flourish. So since we're educators, I'm gonna call it the ABC approach. And the one is to acknowledge. We have to acknowledge that there are differences, especially if they are a minority on a campus. So before, in terms of recruitment, you have to be aggressive in letting people know you can do this. I had an opportunity to talk to a few of my family members, and I asked them, how many African-American teachers did you have on your journey? I was shocked to hear that some of them had never, ever had an African-American teacher from K through 12. And so that was interesting to me, even though I have had only 2 on my journey. But it's important that we acknowledge the differences. So when we talk about retention on a campus, if you've ever been the only African-American on a campus, then you know that there are differences. And I have been, on my journey as a teacher, as a vice principal before. And so the acknowledgement that there are differences and that there are differences that must be addressed. The second is to be. So I said there's an ABC involved. A is to acknowledge, B is to believe that they can be successful, and to also to give them the things that they need to be successful. As a principal, if I had any new teacher, I was always getting their rooms ready with them, rolling up my sleeves, going to Little Red Schoolhouse, and talking about what's expected, but also providing them from my own personal finances how to help. And then believe that if they do make mistakes, that it's because they don't know. And we know that when people know better, they do better. So talking, giving feedback on a regular basis. And then the C would be to create opportunities for relevant cultural proficiency and awareness. It is important when you're recruiting and you're wanting to retain that you're providing cultural proficiency skills with everyone on that campus. No one knows how it feels to be the only Black or one of few, and then the only expectations for you is to take care of the students that they feel that can't be taken care of. And so instead of sending all certain types of students, you help that teacher to be a leader of leaders and say, what are you doing differently in your class for you to be successful with minority students? And then bring them and have them actually share their strategies, as opposed to becoming not the babysitter, but the facilitator for everything that the other teachers can't address. So it's high expectations. I think it has to do with opportunities for dialogue about equity, and then opening that door. If you're a principal on a campus, open that door for teachers to be able to come and to talk about what's going on. Now, when we talk about the other administrators, having been at the district level for more than 20 years of my career, making sure that you are approachable and that you are giving good feedback. Sometimes people are not on the road to administration advancement because of some decisions they're making and nobody's telling them. Everybody's wanting to be sensitive and not say. Give people an opportunity to improve and let them know how they're being seen. Talk to them, have honest dialogue, and build those relationships.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Margaret, so in your work, how have you really helped Black teachers and administrators thrive in our system?
Well, I want to start, Anne, by talking about the representation of Black teachers and administrators in Fortune School, which is a network of public charter schools that I founded to help close the African American achievement gap by getting kids ready for college starting in kindergarten. So whereas in the state of California, 4% of teachers are Black, at Fortune School, 27% of teachers are Black. 67% of our principalship is Black. And the way we've done that is, one, as a leader, and I served for 8 years on the California State University Board of Trustees, and I really kind of learned this ethos there as I was hiring presidents, because that's among the most important assignments that you have as a CSU trustee, is the hiring of presidents in our system. And I learned from academics that one of the most important things that you can do is to develop others. So when you look back at your career, a part of your legacy is to say, you know, who are the professors that I'm responsible for bringing into the profession? Who are the deans? Who are the college presidents? So I very much look at leadership development in my organization as a part of my responsibility, and I take great joy in developing the leadership potential of teachers and leaders. And it has resulted in us having a very high proportion of African Americans represented in our faculty and in our principal roles. I developed a program that's in its 9th cohort, our Fortune School Leadership Program, where where folks can earn their administrative services credential. And we run the program. It is accredited by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and it is run by our institution because any lead educational agency in California can credential their own principals. What I have found is that it's very important to have a public and clear path for career development. Oftentimes, because Blacks get overlooked in educational settings, when you give out general messages about career advancements, they don't necessarily assume that you're talking to them. So for me, it is my clear responsibility to tap people on the shoulder and say, this is the path. I make it a public path. I'm engaged in it personally. And then we're a mission-driven organization, Adne. So our mission is to close the African American achievement gap by preparing kids for college starting in kindergarten. And I am unapologetic about it. Are our schools open to all students? Yes. In fact, 64% of our students are African American. About another 26% are Latino. And for everybody, I'm very clear that I founded these schools to close the African American achievement gap, to prepare by preparing kids for college starting in kindergarten, because Black students are the lowest performing subgroup other than students with special needs. I don't dance around the topic. I don't say students who look like me. I'm very clear. Black students, African American students. It's all of our responsibility to ensure they have an excellent and rigorous educational setting. And because I'm so clear about our mission, I tend to attract Black educators who want to do this as their principal work. So those are the things that I have focused on, and we've achieved some good results.
Cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Margaret, I want to go back to you because I hear some intentionality there as well. But let me pose this. So, what do you find are the barriers into the teaching and the administrator profession? And I know you talked a little bit about some strategies that you've used, but I'd like to kind of hear what you see are barriers into the profession.
So, Adne, I'm always about opportunity. And what I have seen is, is that often told story of the experience of Black educators being relegated to being the disciplinarian, relegated to being in a role of controlling student behaviors, relegated to being the dean of culture, which is a euphemism for discipline, as opposed to being at the center of the discussion about high expectations and academic rigor. In our school system, our interest is for leaders to be instructional leaders. When we think about schools, we think about three things. We think about culture, instruction, and operations. All of those three things need to be excellent. And we design systems of professional development to offer advancement to people within the profession. In my case, particularly Black educators. We invest significant resources. So one of the things I see as folks are making decisions about their educational opportunities and whether or not they're going to advance themselves in that way, cost is always an issue. For our school leadership program, which leads to an administrative services credential, which is good anywhere in the state of California, we pay for it. It's a $7,500 program, and we pay for it for all of our staff that wants to be in that program. We do expect something in return, and that's 3 years of service, or you can pay us back. But we pay for it. After that initial professional development, it's not enough just to have a credential. We have found, and I think this is another barrier because it's not, the credential says I need a minimum qualification. But it doesn't say that I am excellent at what I do because I have the results to prove it. We did a national search of professional development to say, well, where else could we send our leaders so that they can have that level of competency? And we landed upon the Relay Graduate School of Education. And they have a program that is called the Principal Fellowship Program, where they focus on unpacking, how to get better faster, how to establish a strong school culture, how to establish strong data meetings and analytical meetings with your teachers. And so we invest another $25,000 per person to pay for that program. And in a time of normality, not COVID-19, that they would travel to be a part of that program all over the United States, and we pay for that. So that's another investment we're making in our people, $25,000 on top of the credential that we already got them in order for them to go through this training. And then we give them the opportunity to lead. And that, I think, an opportunity to lead that says that you are in charge of your shop, and we're going to hold you accountable for results. Not having that freedom, that flexibility, that opportunity can also be a barrier of its own that we attempt to level.
Cool. Thank you very much. Dr. White, let me ask you something very similar. What barriers have you seen in your career and leadership positions that prevent folks from getting into the teaching and administrative profession? And what strategies have you used to overcome those?
One thing I appreciate about being on this panel is knowing that all three of us come from the same fabric. And that fabric is not just acknowledging what the barriers are, but what do we do to create for solutions? There was a time that I felt that there was a lack of role models in the Inland Empire. And so one of the things that I have done is to highlight the role models that work. Through every organization that we have worked with, we try to give out awards and try to highlight those that are excellent on purpose. And the other part is I would set targets every year. How many teachers am I going to recruit to the field? And I set personal targets. And can they call me 24/7? And then when it came to the principalships too, we set targets. And I think that when you set targets, and then you can see how you're coming along as a team. So one of the barriers is the lack of targets. So the solution would be to set a target so that you're actually bringing people into the field. Some other barriers that I see is a lack of intentionality in terms of a pipeline. Now, I know that even in public education, you can be creative and innovative. And I appreciate charters, I appreciate private schools, and I have had experience with both. But I know that the majority of people are still in the mainstream. And that's why you need the leaders that we have to do the work in staying fervent, even in public education. So at Riverside County, the two things happened. One, under the leadership of Cynthia Glover Woods, and that was the blueprint for success for Blacks. The other was still under her division, but I asked her to work on that, and that was to develop a pipeline for African American or men of color into the field of education. Riverside County office is one of few, not all county offices have that, but we have our own teacher credentialing program, and we also have our own administrative credential program. And in these cohorts, so we are licensed to be able to give the credential, and we also have teams of people who will support anyone that goes through our program, so that you not only get the academic parts of the program and understanding how to master that and take the necessary tests, but you get these coaches that are still in the field so that they can coach you as you go forward. The other challenge, I think, that's a barrier is that while there is outstanding research out there about the benefits of having African American teachers in the pipeline and in the field, it's not as widespread enough. You go to a seminar and you hear it, and then some people sitting next to you, they've never heard it. So we've got to do a better job of the marketing of that. And then last but not least, again, as was stated before, you have to be willing to invest the money. And sometimes even at the county office, I've had to get an attorney involved. Can I invest this extra money in people? And they said, as long as you open it up for anyone to participate, you can do that, and you can require that they give back to the organization. So at the county level, what we had them sign was that they would teach or become an administrator in Riverside County, in any district. And so we've had to work with specific districts to say, yes, I'm going to accept a man of color in order, and that they have to make this commitment too. So when you think about barrier, that should only be a nanosecond, and solutions and opportunities should already be in your mind, because what? You want to be successful.
Cool. Thank you very much. Hey, I want to make sure that our audience knows to put some questions in the chat, because we will get to those in a little bit. So please add your questions, whatever you want to hear from these wonderful women leaders. Dr. White, I want to kind of follow up on something that you were talking about a little bit, that you just mentioned briefly, is mentorship. And then specifically, and Margaret, I'm going to ask this to you as well. Both of you are strong women leaders, and I believe that all of us understand that there's different challenges for women leaders in our system often than there are for the male leaders. And I'm sure that both of you have been engaged in mentoring different individuals throughout the system. And so I was wondering, Can you talk a little bit about what it means to help women navigate our system, as well as any work that you've done to mentor some of our teachers and administrators, our women leaders through the system?
First of all, any women that I have been exposed to in the Inland Empire, I say the Inland Empire because that's where I've served the longest. They know that I'm approachable. They could text me. I'm not secret. They can email me. But I have specifically started a group called Mosaic that focuses on women. And I'm going to be opening it up to men as I'm moving forward to a nonprofit. But Mosaic stands for multicultural, optimistic, support, aspiring, inspiring, and called. And the reason why I started that group is because I was beginning to get quite a few women who wanted me to be their mentor. And because of time and being a grandma of 10, it was very difficult. So what we did is we set up a system where we had our first meeting. I said, okay, I want 100 women, and I want every woman that from the core, say the 30 that were reaching out to me, I want you to bring 2 other women who do not look like you, because I wanted a diverse group of people. But it was very clear, not only were we going to be talking about how can we support everyone in this whole work of multiculturalism, but that they would acknowledge that there are different challenges that a Black woman faces. And so one of the things that happened is that it's been very successful. And so you think about it, not only is multicultural, but they have to have the mindset of being optimistic and then supporting one another. So we would have me being a county superintendent supporting a superintendent, people who want to become superintendents, and then people who are directors supporting site administrators, because that's their next step. So every group supporting the next group for their next step. And then teachers who want to become administrators, you have vice principals supporting them. So we developed this cascade of support. And so what does support look like? Support means that you're talking about those issues that are relevant to you. If it's something academic, we can easily fix that. We can, coach you up. We can talk about that. But one of the challenges that we heard was not necessarily did they know the standards or could they master the standards, help students graduate. It wasn't that. It was navigating the culture on a campus or the culture at a district office. So on my journey, and I've had a very successful journey, and I give all glory to God, but on that journey, I study people. I study what ticks off a white person, not trying to be offensive, because there are some things that does that. And when they're ticked off, it actually comes down heavily on a person of color. So I study people, and then I help them to navigate. And then when people will come to me and then they talk about this happened and this is what I said, then I help them to figure out how do you say that in a different way that's going to be helpful, but mainly giving people hope not to give up. Because if I gave up every time I faced a challenge, I wouldn't be here now, at the ready to retire with full benefits. But what you want to do is you want to be a listening ear, but you want to give them specific strategies of how to be successful in whatever environment that they're in. And then you have to be grateful that you went through some of those challenging times, because people don't want to hear it from someone who hasn't experienced it. So mentoring means you give them the personal coaching, you give them the academic coaching and the cultural coaching. And then as women, the other part of this challenge is balancing your home life. Because I don't care, this might be 2020, and you might say, I can bring home the bacon and fry it up and the man and all that other good stuff. But the truth is, the men, they want the women to do double duty, and even the good ones. And I got a good one. But the fact of the matter is they need the mentors, and they need somebody that can be confidential. And that was the main key, confidentiality. You have to be confidential as you mentor and help other people.
So Margaret, I know that I know all the young people that have been in your circle and how they look to you for leadership. Can you give me some insight on sort of what it means to you to mentor young women through the system, and an idea of how you've been engaged in this?
Well, I mean, I tell you, I try to lead by example. I've been the lead of my school system for 12 years, and I founded schools that were not the schools that I had as a child, but the schools that I would have wanted to have. And I will tell you that I have been a mentor to men and women. And I want to talk about the brothers for a minute. And I've created a setting where a Black man can lead. So many Black men have come to me and told me about the glass ceiling that they've hit in the organization where they are in a situation where they can follow but never lead, where they can be number two but never number one. And it doesn't matter how much experience they have. They're not trusted to take leadership and be in the top seat. Now, that is antithetical to my experience because, like your father, my father was a superintendent of schools in Inglewood Unified in the 80s and in Center Unified in the 90s. He is the one that handed me my high school diploma. His father before him was a principal. So, and he went to his father's school. So the notion to me, especially given the tradition that our fathers were a part of with Wilson Riles and that whole class of Black superintendents that came out of that administration, it doesn't add up to me that a Black man can't lead. It's not in my DNA. But Black men are having that experience.
Right.
So for me, it's been as important to mentor men as it has been women. And I want to be fairly specific on this. My model is to have a school leadership program, which I mentioned before, but the purpose of it is to be the research and development arm of my organization. This is where I give mission-aligned, organizational priority-aligned projects to people. And I say that if you do the work and work with me personally and closely, and your project is real, it will be reflected in our school system. And I'm not talking about minor ways. I'm talking about in major ways. So for example, my director of special education, Mr. Andre Slade, is African-American. He was my program specialist. He went through my school leadership program and spent a year with me developing his vision of what our special education department should look like. And at the end of that year, I took his idea, I created the department, and I made him the director. And he does a fabulous job. That to me is mentorship and a real investment in the ideas of the people that you are leading. And so that's my style. I do that with men and with women. And the last thing I'll say on this point, Adne, is this. I know Dr. White because she was deputy superintendent when I came to the San Bernardino City Unified School District with Hardy Brown College Prep, a public charter school. And she was supportive of that. And this charter school is now one of the highest performing majority Black schools, charter school or traditional school in the state of California. In fact, 4 Fortune schools are on that top list. There are only 12 schools in the state of California, public schools, that are in the top half of academic performance in English, language arts, and math. And 4 of them are Fortune schools. They're all named after living, local African-American community icons. People like William Lee, the publisher of the Sacramento Observer newspaper. People like Hardy Brown, the longtime school board member in San Bernardino and the publisher of the Black Voice News. And they are led by Black principals, and their academic performance is excellent. I'm having a conversation in terms of mentorship that's about Black excellence. That is attractive to Black people, and I am at it long enough where they can see the arc of their own leadership in that. And now people are coming to me to say, you know what? We have many options within the public schools, and one of them is the charter option, and I want to start my own school. That the ultimate act of Black liberation is self-determination. And the law gives me the opportunity to open schools. And so not only do I want to be your staffer, nope, I want to spread my wings and have my own school. And that is where I came from historically. My parents on both sides were, Southern educators in one-room rural schoolhouses after slavery.
Right.
So, yeah.
Man, that's powerful. I appreciate it. That's real powerful and inspiring. So, Mark, you were talking about that piece in terms of creating sort of your own schools and the generation of that. Let me ask this in a little different way. So what does collaboration or partnership look like with institutions of higher education or other preparation programs, or even organizations like AXA, or the partners that I'm working with, Diversity and Leadership, and the Center for Powerful Public Schools? What does collaboration look like to you with all of us as we try to address the issue of the Black teacher and administrator pipeline?
I'd love to jump in on that. When I was a trustee of the California State University, I served, as I mentioned earlier, for 8 years. And I said, I'm here to find one person, and that is the president who will collaborate with me on closing the Black Achievement Gap. And that president was Jeff Armstrong of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And because of that partnership, we formed a high school together. And that high school, the Rex and Margaret Fortune Early College High School, is a STEM school where kids can graduate with their high school diploma and their associate's degree in general science at the same time. I am certain that one of those students will come back and teach in school. Because they're proud of it, because they're able to, and because a part of the ethic that we are cultivating in them is citizenship, and that we are educating them on purpose and for a purpose, and that's to come back to our community, not the community in general, but our community in specific, in order to help us with this work. And in fact, as somebody I know that Dr. White knows, and that is Rafi Bell, who grew up in the San Bernardino City Schools and was on the original design team when he was a young man just coming out of his bachelor's degree for Hardy Brown College Prep, which is now one of the highest performing schools in the state. It took me years to get him back, but he's teaching science at Hardy Brown College Prep. And this is not a short game. This is a long game. And so a part of that setting of the example and building the community and building the programs and creating the inspiration and the draw to come back and do it here is the expectation setting that we're doing now that lays a pathway for the future.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. White, what about yourself? What does collaboration look like with higher ed or organizations like AXA?
It looks like intentionality, because the thing about it, if you know that the power of collaboration is being intentional, then you set up the opportunities to collaborate. And in Riverside County, when we looked at the data and we saw that out of the 19,624 teachers serving the 23 districts, that there were only 3% African-American females and only 1.4% African-American males, even though the students were 6%. But then when you looked at the Hispanic, the teachers comprised 17.54%, while the Latino males 6.22%, but the student population is 64%. So you look at the landscape and you say, okay, I identify that there is a need. We want the teachers to reflect more the students. And it's not even just about that. We're talking about, we want people who want to be there teaching our students, doesn't matter which color they are. And then we reached out to Cal State San Bernardino in our situation, and we sat and we talked about what could we do together as a team. So when you're intentional, it means that you're going to plan. And the other part of it too is collaborating with groups like AXA and CASA, the California Association of African American Superintendents. CASA has been very involved in the Inland Empire. And, I think we're a testament to sitting here together. While both of you, your parents, you had fathers who were superintendents. I had a mother who was an instructional aide. So you think about how education can provide an opportunity to break barriers of poverty. We have to be committed to this work. And becoming the first African-American superintendent of Moreno Valley, how we got Moreno Valley to go from 66.7% graduation rates to now they're over 90%. And we're talking about with all groups, that only happened when you hired the best. And you can't hire the best if they're not in the system. 2 years ago, we offered in Riverside County a CERP, a early retirement. If you want to get out, but this is the direction we're going at. And 126 people took that. Now, all I did for the first 2 years there was talk about servant leadership, excellence on purpose, and collaboration. And there were people who were ready to go in a different direction. So when we had this opportunity to hire, we hired the best of every single race. And when we hired the best, there were African-American males at the top of that list, not because they were African-American, but because they were good. And so I just say that is because I think I've heard it mentioned already in our conversation, but you can never reduce your standards. You have to have excellence, and you have to be part of helping people to become excellent. So partnership is important. And we have a demonstrated partnership with Cal State San Bernardino right now. And AXA, you guys have been friends with Riverside County and San Bernardino County. But don't forget CASA and CALSA, both of those groups to help support minorities in mentorships, as well as helping with this pipeline.
Cool. Thank you so much. I want to go now to some questions from our audience because I'm seeing a lot of the questions pile up. And so I want to make sure I get to some of those. This one's from Dana McMullen. Is the time to make an admin move, is this the right time to make an administrative move with the instability of placements due to the pandemic? Either one of you that want to step in to answer that.
I'll weigh in on that real quick, and then, of course, Dr. Fortune is going to say what she's going to say. But I say it's still a right time if that district or that position matches your skill set and your desire. Only thing I ask is that you do your homework. Always know where you're going, what they're about, what their priorities are, and also these, that is the position that's not grant funded that could end in 2 years. Look at it. But now is the time. We had openings in Riverside County even when I left, and we had true openings. The pandemic is not going to stop the need. In fact, it's going to increase the need to make sure that no child is left behind, to ensure that everything is done appropriately. So I'd say if you've done your homework, your skills are a match for the district that's hiring, it's still okay to move during the pandemic.
Cool. Thank you. Thoughts, Margaret, on that?
And we've opened 2 schools in the pandemic, 2 brand new schools this fall that have started with distance learning. And so, I think now is as good a time as any. It's an unprecedented time, and you're going to learn a brand new skill set for sure. But this will not last forever. And so if you are a gift to children, they still need you, even in this pandemic, even more. So I would encourage you.
Cool. Thank you very much. I have a question from Troy Littlejohn. He asks, how do you avoid being pigeonholed into being the disciplinarian on campus and seen as the coach of academics?
Well, that goes to what I was talking about. And I think you have to really go to an organization that's mission aligned, that has a track record for hiring and promoting Black people, Black men in positions of leadership. And also, I think you have to push. Oftentimes we get what we ask for. And so, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So we put ourselves in the situations and the circles and the circumstances that we want for our own advancement. And, we heard Kamala Harris in her acceptance speech, in her victory speech on Saturday say, that just because people are not accustomed to seeing you in a position of leadership, that doesn't mean that we're going to limit our imagination about where we belong. And we see where she is. And I just have to pull out my little American flag because I'm proud to be an American today. I know that much right here. So, you got to put yourself in the position.
Right.
I think I'd like to add on to that. People see you as you see yourself. You've got to define yourself. You can't wait for them to define you. So more practical steps, if you are on a campus and you know that you've been serving in that role, and you've been helping kids though, so don't shake your head about that because you've been helping kids. You should go to the administration and volunteer to do something different that puts you in a whole different light. Like, I'll give you an example. I had when I was a principal, and we were doing a lot of things at the school, the last assignment that I had, but the GATE students, we probably weren't doing as much that we could have been doing. And so a teacher came and said, you know what, I've been good at working with the kids that people have asked me to have time out in my room and all of that other good stuff, but can I help with the GATE students? So find out where there's a niche, where there's a void, and then volunteer to do that. And it redefines you in that role because you're helping the entire campus, but you're helping them to see you in a different role. And it could be anything. I just use that as an example, but define yourself and don't let people just define you. And speak to administration and speak to even central office sometimes about how you can serve, not complaining, but just saying, hey, I want to serve on this particular task force.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask this too, and both of you have sort of touched on it a little bit. So William Dunford asked this question. He says that due to the multiple barriers to becoming a credentialed teacher in California, many pre-service Black teachers choose careers in independent and private schools with more lenient hiring standards. What are your thoughts about this?
I run a teacher credentialing program. And so, a part of my work is to, and I do that for a consortium of 60 school districts that credential teachers through Fortune School of Education. And the standards, oftentimes Black candidates get tripped up on the CSET. And while there's some movement in New York to eliminating that testing, now will be an interesting time to see the impact of it because the governor, because of the pandemic, has issued an executive order in which you have over a year in order to complete those tests, meaning that you can enter program now. So it will be interesting to see if there's an uptick in African-American teachers who have felt that those examinations are a barrier. But having said that, you heard the statistics of my school system, 27% Black teachers, where in the state, there's 4% Black teachers. All of those folks have gone through that process. Now, what we understand from the research is that Black teachers are often more successful in internship models. That's the model that I operate in, that are cohort-based, and that are also a model where you are doing your teaching through an internship at the same time as your credential coursework. So it's more of a hands-on model. But I think that there is still opportunity within the system for African Americans. And I think that the data from my school system bears that out.
Thank you.
But, Riverside County offices, I mentioned earlier, we offered a teaching credentialing program too. And people participate all over the world. We actually have, international candidates in our program. So I would suggest you research the programs and see which one is going to help support you. And I think one of the barriers has been the testing, and it doesn't test your intelligence, but the testing is required. I think that if I was starting all over again, I would look at programs and not just look at programs in my immediate vicinity, but I would look at programs, Margaret Fortune schools, as well as Riverside County Office of Education.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to ask this. So one of our partners, Diversity and Leadership, has a question. And I think maybe you've touched on a little bit, but I think it deserves to be highlighted some more. What strategies have you found to be most effective in retaining Black teachers and leaders? And either one of you who wants to go first.
I'll go ahead and jump in there. I think one, having a clear path to advancement has been to our advantage. So having a cohort-based leadership program where people know that if they want to have a path to advancement, whether that is being a lead teacher or a master teacher or being a director of a department or an academic coach or a principal, that this is the program that they go in. The other thing, so that has been an effective strategy. The other thing that has been an effective strategy for me as the lead of a school system is to constantly be talking about that opportunity, to be the one, and I do this every year. I invite people to come meet with me. I send out the email to everybody, come meet with me. Come to my session and hear about how you lead. I make that topic of how you lead and how you gain advancement something I talk about in my annual address. And then I carve out my time and say, I've got in my system about 300 employees. I'm not going to be in a position to intimately know every member of my team, but for those that want to know me as a leader, the way to meet me is through that school leadership program, because I'm the one that is in charge of the seminar on the Educational Leadership Project, which is this project that is our gateway into research and development for the organization. So I have found that we have to be very intentional about tapping African Americans on the shoulder and say, yes, I do mean you. And I'm also very overt in saying what's happening. I narrate what I'm doing. I'm tapping you on the shoulder for leadership.
Right.
This is that happening. So when you start telling your personal narrative, do not say it never happened to you. It's happening right now.
I love it.
There are some teachers that want to stay teachers. I have a sister that's actually older than I am who's still teaching special needs students. And she's never wanted to go advance, and she's been very, very successful in San Bernardino City Schools. But for those that, I think the question had to do with the retention of teachers. So I think the looking forward to leadership is one thing, but how do you keep them there if they still want to teach? I think you got to care for them as a human being. I think that you have to listen to them, hold high expectations, but also encourage them to participate in networking groups such as AXA, CASA, and CALSA, because sometimes people think they're the only ones going through something, and then they get discouraged and then they leave the field. You have to give them resources, and you have to actually place them in their positions of success. So if you have somebody on campus, you want to keep them. If they're not being successful, is it a different grade level? Is it elementary? Is it a different content area? Look at their credentials, but mainly letting them know they are not alone. Because there's nothing like it. Like I said, I've been there, been on a campus, and don't let something happen out in the community because they blame you. You have to be the voice for everything that happens that's Black. And so just make sure that they know that you're there with them. They are not alone.
Right.
I mean, let me jump back in and circle around to the question, because Dr. White rightly pointed out the question was about retention. And the reason why I hopped that lily pad to leadership is that sometimes the way to retain people is for them to know that they have a future with you. Mm-hmm. And we have a 70% teacher retention rate at Fortune School, which in our book is not good enough. We are aiming for 80%. And we asked teachers, what would make this a more attractive place to be? And a part of it is recognition. We found that we weren't doing a good job of acknowledging and recognizing people for the work that they were doing. And that's when you started to see us do more around that, of recognition for the work. I think sometimes when you're doing this difficult work, you can just kind of keep your head down and keep going and not acknowledge the milestones that are being met. So I think that there is a place here for celebration of success and celebration of hard work.
Exactly. That's powerful. So I have a couple of questions that are specific to each of you. And so I'm going to ask you, both of you, some different questions. So Dr. White, in retirement, how do you see yourself manifesting this passion of cultivating Black educators?
During my retirement, one has to do with this group I call Mosaic that will be, now it's not going to be gender specific, it's going to be for all educators and others too. And then the second thing, I'm joining Hardy Brown in the work on the Empathy Center, Empathy Lab out at Riverside. And we're going to be there to support all educators. And then I'm also partnering with a group called The Third Option. And that's a race relations training program that I'll be involved with. So I'll be defining it more. People know how they can tap into anything that I'm related to, but I want to be here still to serve, but then I'll just be serving on my own time. I don't have to do it every day. So, but I do plan to continue serving. I think that the Lord has blessed me to be in so many different positions in the field of education that I could probably coach, support anyone, along with the life challenges I have overcome. So I'm there to serve and be a leader, a servant leader.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. And so, Margaret, here's a good one for you. We were asked, when do you plan to expand your reach into LA County?
Well, my mission is very clearly to be in San Bernardino and Sacramento. And the way we expand our reach at Fortune School is through our teacher education and administrative credential programs. So our teacher education program is designed to teach our model to say, you know, if you want to do what we're doing at a classroom level, this is how you do it. And our school leadership program is about, if you want to do what we're doing at a school level, this is how you do it. And, you know, I have found, we had a convening, Audney, with the National Action Network Western Regional Conference, where we brought together all of the highest performing majority Black public schools in California to really unpack how they do what they do, and to build a community so that we could be talking to each other. And now what I'm finding is that people from different communities, you know, Fresno, Bakersfield, are calling me, Los Angeles, are calling to say, you know, how did you do that and how can I do that here? So Fortune School is not going to expand beyond Sacramento and San Bernardino, but what we will do for other communities is teach them how to fish. Because the most, I want to end on this note and say the most, something I'm really proud about in San Bernardino is that a couple of our teachers spun off and created their own school, Savant. And when I went and they're from San Bernardino, Eva Tillman, that Tillman family is strong in San Bernardino. And when I went to visit the school, I could see that her experience at Hardy Brown influenced that school. And so I'm proud that when people in their own backyard create excellence.
Thank you. Thank you. That's powerful. I appreciate it. So I wanted to ask this too before we finish up with one final question from our audience. I think that we've been having this really robust conversation today. And this question is trying to get at, how are school districts determining the validity of their opportunities that they're creating for African-American males and females? And what does that look like? I mean, it goes beyond sort of just saying that you're doing something and actually really demonstrating that you're providing opportunities. And so I'm curious, Dr. White, what does that type of validity look like from your perspective?
From a local perspective, we're talking about self-accountability. So some of the things we would do is to look at the numbers. How do they compare in reflection to our student numbers? But then when we did lose a teacher or an administrator, when they decided to go somewhere else or left the field, we had exit interviews so that we can say, what can we do better if it was something that was part of the organization? At the county level, We continue to provide professional development and network groups for every level, teacher network groups, administrative network groups, and then provide and making sure that we're integrating these equity issues and conversations about race for all in them. And then when I did serve as Riverside County Superintendent, we had the dialogues with the superintendents themselves. The last book that we read in 1920 school year was White Fragility. So when you get 23 superintendents reading the same book to raise their level of awareness about these race issues, I think that's part of accountability as well. Look at the numbers and hold yourself accountable, create support systems.
Thank you, thank you. Would you like to get in on that, Margaret? Any thoughts?
No, I defer to Dr. White on that.
And so I wasn't gonna just do one more, but I saw a couple of good questions coming up. One from Sean Bell. From both of y'all's perspective, how do universities become more intentional? How do they get more Black and Latinx students into their programs nationally? What makes them more attractive, even though we're seeing some numbers down?
Now that one I would like to jump in on. I spoke a little bit about my experience with the California State University, and the reason why Cal Poly obviously has a lot of work to do with only 1 to 2% African Americans, which is frankly why I chose them. I felt like they had a reason to be partnering with a school system that is college preparatory and 64% African American. But our approach has been really looking at doing the work over the long haul. We start our dialogue with students about Cal Poly in 5th grade, when our students take a 5th grade overnight field lesson to Cal Poly to go do science in the Learn by Doing Science Lab with their teacher ed students in science. And that's when the president and I stand side by side with all of his team and say, hey, we want you to go to Cal Poly. And then we back that up and continue that relationship throughout their K-12 experience, such that now we have our first graduating class of high school students from Rex and Margaret Fortune Early College High School. That's a partnership with Cal Poly and Cosumnes River College. And they have raised scholarship dollars so the kids that are at the top of our class will be able to have a free ride. Even though California continues to embrace Proposition 209 and has put down affirmative action in this last vote that we had the opportunity to make on November 3rd, there are ways through foundations to direct scholarship dollars to African Americans. So I think that one being specific, that you're talking to African Americans and it's not this kind of broad people of color thing or this broad minorities thing, but we're calling out African Americans as a group that's worthy of our assistance, right? And that you're starting early to develop a relationship with the child and their parents, that you come back to the community again and again and again. And that's what Stacey Abrams is talking about as it relates to the Black vote. Don't just come around around election time, come around all the time.
Right.
Black folks need the same care and feeding that any other community that you care about needs. And that's why the president and his wife come back repeatedly to Sacramento, invite the parents to come to Cal Poly, so that that school becomes a part of the imagination of children as a place that is welcome, a place where they are welcome. That has been my approach, and we'll see how it works. I mean, we have a first graduating class coming out this spring that we're very excited about.
Cool, thank you. Dr. White, I wanted to ask you this because we heard from Margaret talk a little bit about how she is intentional in terms of leadership positions and helping generate and support leaders moving through the Fortune schools. What would you recommend principals who are interested in pursuing a higher level position within a school district? What would you recommend to them in terms of moving through the system?
I'd strongly recommend that they volunteer for opportunities at the district level. Two opportunities that they don't realize actually are very powerful is working on the negotiations team, because it's important for you to understand how the relationships with the associations are. And I don't care, people can pretend like the associations, whether you're a teachers association or you're classified, don't have power. They have a lot of power. And so you want them to get to know you as a person. You want to also share information to your district office about what's working well on your campus. So it could be just a weekly or monthly, hey, this is what's happening on our campus, because people tend to promote those that they know their work. And then last but not least, when we talk about the glass ceiling, I did a presentation one time, is that you got to study the walls that hold the ceiling up. You have to study the walls that hold that glass ceiling up.
Wow.
And that's the relationship with the people at the central office. So when your name comes up, everybody says, oh yes, that's to be the best person for that. And best person means you followed their lead when you were a follower. And then also there was innovation. So it's not being just the best person in the room that listens and does the work, but you're the best thinker in the room. And they know you know how to think and innovate.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So before I finish up, so I want to give you both an opportunity, because I'm seeing a lot of comments that are asking, okay, how do I find out about Mosaic? How do I find out about Fortune Schools? Would you both mind sharing where folks can find information about what you work on?
Yeah, you could go to Mosaic Legacy, and then there's a couple of Mosaic groups, but make sure it's Mosaic Legacy on the website, and then you'll see it'll come up, and then you can leave a message saying that you want to be contacted for more information. So that's what's going on with Mosaic.
Cool, thank you. And Margaret?
For Fortune School, go to fortuneschool.us. That's fortuneschool.us, and you can learn about our school leadership program and sign up for an information session. Our programs are totally online, so it doesn't matter where you live, anywhere in the state of California, you can be a part of our program. That's fortuneschool.us. And Agne, I want to come back to a previous question that you asked, and that's about, how do you know school systems are doing the work and really offering opportunities for African Americans? It's always been my point of view that we do what we measure. And so I think it's really important, and I want to challenge districts and public charter schools alike to have equity metrics, specifically calling out their equity metrics for teachers and leader pipelines. And I think that that's where we can begin to distinguish between, talking about the work and really doing the work.
Cool. That is wonderful advice. Thank you very much. So I want to keep this idea of advice moving. And so my final question for both of you is, we have a working group. So both Diversity and Leadership, the Center for Powerful Public Schools, and AXA are, we're doing a working group to really get at the Black teacher and administrator pipeline. And so what advice would you give the working group as we discuss these issues and some of the things that we talked about today? Dr. White?
Okay, I started off with acronyms ABC. I'm going to end with RUN, R-U-N, RUN. And R is to recruit. You need to start recruiting in middle schools, high schools, and colleges. So we're starting too late. And even as Dr. Fortune mentioned, they have something that the fifth graders do. You have to put it in the minds of the children that this is a viable occupation. The U is going to stand for unite. And we're going to unite through the equity trainings, the teacher preparation programs, the unconscious bias training by CTA. That is going to be something that can help. And then the campuses. And then the N is normalize. When we're thinking about bringing this to normal conditions so that 10 years from now, we're not saying, oh, we're so far behind. I mean, because you can get a good teacher out of the system in 5 years, maybe even less than that as they are changing the rules, but make sure that we are intentional. So it says, I say run, recruit, unite, and normalize.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. Margaret?
And what I have to offer on this question, Adne, is that Black educators have to unite around Black children being proficient in English language arts, math, science, and humanities, the academic rigor. That's what we need to come together on. And we cannot allow the diversity of the staff to become a proxy for the academic achievement of the children, because those are two separate things.
Right.
And what we have is some in the political world substituting a conversation of Black teachers for a conversation about closing the achievement gap among Black students. And that significantly lets folks off the hook. And I don't have any interest in doing that. So I think we have to, in that task force, put these two conversations together because they are related. The reason why Black people at higher rates are coming to work for me is because I'm saying Black kids deserve great schools too, because I'm talking about the children and I'm not making that conversation of Black excellence, academic rigor, accountability, something that is just something that you swim upstream on, or that you have to be some type of renegade. But that's the mainstream of the conversation. And if that's true, more Black people will want to be in on that. So we have to be talking about the core of what education is all about, and that is the achievement of the children as a part of this conversation about who are the right adults to be in front of them to get those outcomes.
I know you're trying to close this off, but let me tell you something.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to close
Okay,
it off.
Come on now, Dr. White, come on.
What she said is so critical. So I want you to look at Moreno Valley as a fishbowl, an example of when you do it the right way. And you said, I will not be apologetic about any student. And you can garner everyone around the same notion that all of our students have to be successful, and especially our African Americans, because traditionally they have not been. Then you can get it going. When I first went there, the first year they had an opening that nobody applied for a principalship. Can you believe that at a school? Not one application. By the time we started this energy and saying all students are going to learn, and we are going to have some groups that's working, especially for African American. The last time I opened up a principalship before I left Moreno Valley, 65 applicants for one position. Wow. And they will be drawn, people will be drawn to excellence. They will be drawn to people who want to do what's right. And so that's why we can't compromise. And and you're not waiting till there's a Black face in every classroom for the excellence. The excellence has to be because it's the right thing to do. This whole moral obligation. That's
Come
what
on, Doctor.
People. Right. That's what has to drive all the people, and everybody has to be moving towards the same thing. And you have to take your unions with you. I'm telling you, it was our union that got us a grant for hundreds of thousands of dollars for unconscious bias. It was the unions who said it, but they didn't want to say it until they knew somebody really believed in what was happening. Once they knew we believed, our administration, they were with us. So make sure, no compromise. Hey, Lisa, you're on the line. All right. So Lisa Broomfield was part of it. And I'll tell you, Dr. Martin Kedziora, he was my right hand on that journey. And he is not Black. This man is white with a Black heart. But anyway, he was for all kids. He was for all kids.
I love it.
And I think I'm the only African American that's got the bilingual award for caring about Hispanic kids. So I'm saying you care about the kids you serve. And
That's right.
And you don't. And I probably and I got the awards for the white kids too, the Asian kids too. Why? Because I care about kids. But when the Black kids are not at the top, we have to talk about it, and we cannot be shy, and we have to make sure that both. And we shouldn't have to always go to private or charter. It has to be in every system, and that's the part. I love my charter schools. I love private schools, but I'll tell you, public schools are not going to be off the hook. They are not.
And a part of why, charter schools are public schools. And a part of why traditional public schools won't be off the hook is because public schools like mine exist too.
Yes.
So, and that's the power. You say, what can AXA do? Well, AXA is doing it. It's amplifying examples and being agnostic about the delivery system.
Yes.
There are many who would seek to take me out of the conversation entirely because they don't like the delivery system. But I grew up like you did with that AXA logo in my household.
That's right.
because of my daddy, right? That brand as a child you saw on this plaque or that plaque, right? So it's so important that ACTS is having these conversations, and the conversation is about the possible.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine what's possible, and let's have a conversation about what we can do, and let's be inclusive in that conversation. And let's talk about Black kids, because if we don't talk about them, then we can't be about them.
Right. I hear that. Amen. Amen. Listen, I didn't mean to bring everybody to church this afternoon, but we did. That's what we do. That's what our people do. That's how we do it. And if you're not inspired today and ready to tackle these issues, then, man, I don't know what will do it for you. We heard from some great leaders today. Dr. White, I so appreciate you taking the time after you've retired and you've come to join us. I truly appreciate it. Margaret, my friend, my sister, it is great to see you. Normally we would probably do this on a stage where we could hug and high five. And so I really appreciate both of you joining us. This has been a powerful conversation, an inspiring conversation. And I know that my partners, we're going to take this working group and really be inspired by all of your work, and we're going to run with it. And we hope to have some wonderful results moving forward. I want to thank all of the folks that put in questions. Thank you so much that you joined us this afternoon and took the time to I hope you broke some bread and listened and put in some questions. We appreciate it. You will shortly get a survey from us to ask about your interest in our working group. We look forward in doing this work and producing some recommendations and some actual strategies, because I know that even at AXA and Diversity and Leadership and the Center for Powerful Public Schools, we're not just trying to talk. We're not about just statements. We're about doing work, and we want to get some work done, and we want to see some change in our system, because as you heard today, it's either about the ABCs, it's about run, it's about being intentional, having a mission for Black students, and it's about Black students deserve great schools as well, and about Black excellence. And that's how we can improve not just our students, but all of the students in our system. And so I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm inspired. I hope you're inspired. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.